This is Governor Bobber. I like good day, doctors.
George Allen here. Good day, doctors.
There we go. It's Friday, and it's just the two of us tonight. We're winding down 2021. Hard to believe how fast 2021 through, Don.
Yeah, I mean,
It's like just yesterday. We were all getting our first vaccine dosages, or trying to get them at this point last year, I think. And we're, so it's been a fast in a year. A lot of stuff has been happening this year, including everything from we've got been a fascinating year. This past week, we lost two World War II veterans, one Senator Dole, and name escapes me the second guy, but yeah, it's been an interesting week.
Yeah, let me before we go into it, let me just ask you. I mean, compared to 2020, Dwight, do you think that this year went faster?
I think it did. I think 2020, because we were locked down for most of 2020. I think that's what made it go lumber on. I mean, we had a little bit of movement. We were able to travel again in 2021, which I think that helped move things along.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that. I mean, I think that's part of the thing here is just that our lives were so upended in 2020 that, the year, days will go by, the years will always pass by, but when you can have getting closer to your normal pace of life, then I think it does move quickly. I mean, every time you look around, it's like, okay, well, what happened to my week just now? What happened to my day?
That there was a time when every day you wake up, every day seemed like to be the same day. It's kind of like every day felt the same, no real change.
I will say for that 3-month period in 2020 when I couldn't go to the gym, it was, it kind of took me off kilter. I still don't really know why I wake up at 3:30 in the morning to hit the gym because it is quieter in the morning, but I definitely do get tired at certain points of the day as a result of getting up so early.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. Now this year just flew by, and I think next year, hopefully, barring no more lockouts or lockdowns or anything, knock on granite, so to speak, we should be fine. I think next year. Well, fine as in no lockdown. We'll still have Joe Biden living in the White House, so I don't know how fine we can be with Joe in the White House.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about. All right, so as you were mentioning at the beginning here, I mean, we lost Senator Bob Dole this week.
Yeah,
98 years old. Pretty pretty amazing. I mean, he kept chugging along there. He had lung cancer for a number of years, and he just kept kind of chugging along.
Yeah.
I did like that somebody had posted a video on Facebook, just kind of reminder of when President Bush had died, that he was there, and they helped him out of the wheelchair so that he could salute him and everything like that. Now look, for a lot of conservatives, Bob Dole received a ton of criticism and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, Bob Dole was no Paul Weyrich, Reed Irvine conservative. I mean, he was not he was he was basically our old guard, but Bob Dole was a good guy. I've always liked Bob Dole. I liked Bob Dole in '98, and then in '96, that was the first national convention I attended when Bob Dole was running for president. Went there to help out Claudette Hale and a couple other candidates. And that was the very first convention. I thought it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of, and I still think West Coast conventions are the best conventions because everything's over at 9 p.m. opposed to East Coast conventions. Everything's over at 11 and you're partying till about 4 in the morning, and then you're up again, and then it starts everything over. So you're really sleep deprived when we have East Coast conventions.
Was that San Diego?
Yeah, San Diego. Matt and I had a lot of fun. That was also the year we got hosed by Enterprise. We rented a car when we were there. We thought we'd actually use it, but they had a great bus service that took us into the convention security zone and all that, and we didn't have to deal with parking and stuff like that. And so we basically the car sat there. I think we maybe drove like 15 miles. We drove to the zoo, I think, on Saturday or Friday because the convention was over Thursday. Yeah. So I mean that's about long and short of it. But yeah, I mean I'm a big admirer. I got Senator Dole to come and speak at George Washington University back in the day. And we got to meet Senator Dole. Senator Dole's a good guy. He's not what we would call our rank and file conservative, but I mean he was a Republican, a good loyal Republican who actually got a lot of things done. One being the Americans with Disability Act, which brought in a whole lot of which is greatly beneficial for a lot of disabled veterans and disabled folks in general.
Yeah, look, I mean, Bob Dole had a very long and storied, career, and served us very, very well. Yeah, as you said, not kind of the he doesn't fit, say, the Ronald Reagan mold of conservatism or anything like that. But he was a great politician. He did reach across the aisle. He was good on both sides. That '96 campaign, pretty forgettable. I mean,
yeah.
I like Jack Kemp, but I think the two of them was not a mix, and they were neither one of them had the right personality. I mean, part of this is Republicans have been looking and rarely finding the charisma of Ronald Reagan when you look at it through that prism. And if there was somebody besides, say, a John McCain that was far off of that track, it was Bob Dole. I mean, Jack Kemp was was diehard conservative. But I just, I'm going to be honest with you. I would fall asleep at his speeches, and that's the problem with Kemp.
Well, here's the thing with Bob. Here's the thing about Bob Dole. I'll tell you this: Bob Dole was not as bad. John McCain went out of his way to poke conservatives in the eye. Bob Dole didn't do that at the same level as John McCain. It's like his basically his. Everything from his defeat to Barack Obama in 2008. Then he comes back and says, these people are doing jobs Americans won't do, referring to illegal aliens. And then him having campaign finance reform because evidently he basically, because he broke the law with the Keating Five. He goes, if there was a law in place, I would not have broken the law. Bob Dole was a no-nonsense kind of guy. Bob Dole was a class act, frankly. And I think, I'd rather have him in the White House right now than Joe Biden, frankly.
Well, I think that a lot of people would agree with that. I mean, look, Bob Dole brought Midwestern values, right? I mean, that's the thing that was his linchpin for him. Growing up in Kansas, I think what was it, Russell, Kansas?
Yep.
He was always a Kansan at heart. I mean, and having had my daughter and my son-in-law living largely in the Midwest since they got married. I mean, they start off in Utah, but when he went to school in Iowa, and then did his residency in Indiana, and they're living in Indiana. One thing that I can say about any of those areas, whether it's Iowa or Indiana, I think the same goes for Kansas, all of those kind of Midwestern states, is that the people there are really good people. I mean, politically, you don't have to necessarily agree with them.
Yep.
But they're generally pretty darn good people, and they have some pretty good values. There's a lot of flyover. I mean, this is God and country, this is and Bob Dole. I mean, for heaven's sakes, the guy almost got killed in World War II. He was permanently disabled, from serving our country, and it really bothers me for conservatives today to attack him, particularly after his death. Look, the guy, please put him in the perspective of the time that he was around when he was serving in the Senate, when he was running for president, all of those things. He was a great American. He will be missed on that. He was a stand-up guy, and we don't have a lot of those politicians left anymore. Politics have become so polarized that you don't have a lot of Bob Doles. Look, like you said, you would take Bob Dole in the White House. I mean, I would take Bob Dole over a lot of politicians these days.
Yeah, I mean, he was he led the Republicans, and as I've always said, if you're in leadership and you're liked by everybody, you're not doing your job right. And I mean, I think he was a better leader than Mitch McConnell. Frankly, I think Mitch McConnell seems to be. I mean, Bob Dole knew when to hold the line. Mitch McConnell, I find, sometimes caves a little too easily, which I think Alan Simpson and Bob Dole would not have caved as easily, on stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, Mitch is going to. I mean, Mitch is going to have a lot of detractors, and he does have a lot of detractors. But
Mhm.
in the end of the day, the thing is that he has done a pretty darn good job
Yep.
of leading the Senate and for the Republicans
Yep.
and weeding his way through a lot of tricky positions.
Yep.
He's still a loyal Republican. Where it was, he'll
Yeah.
take. The thing about McConnell too is that he'll take a lot of brickbats and whatnot, but he does. Isn't our good friend Garrett? Isn't he a big McConnell fan?
Yes, he is. Garrett Zahner is a big Mitch McConnell fan.
So if Garrett ever watches this program and says, "Look, Mitch is," I've told him, I says, Mitch isn't a bad guy. He gets a lot of undeserved criticism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many people can do that job?
Yeah.
Well?
And again, as I say, Mitch McConnell. One thing, and I think and we'll probably talk about more about this later. We're on the cusp of ending Roe v. Wade, and Mitch McConnell should get that credit. He's the one that shepherded through all of President Trump's judicial appointments.
Yeah.
Prevented
Merrick Garland from getting on.
Yes, he used parliamentary procedures and historics to not go, not to push Merrick Garland. Kept Merrick Garland, which is, as he is the AG, I think he would have been a disaster on the Supreme Court.
Well, yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing here with Merrick Garland as the Attorney General, right? I think what we're seeing with the actions of the Justice Department, what we dodged, in not having him on the court. I mean, because he's if there's anybody who has politicized the DOJ, it is Merrick Garland at this point. And we're seeing that with this whole Texas issue. I mean, oh yeah, so the DOJ is going to go and sue Texas over their redistricting map, which is nowhere near as egregious as, say, Maryland or other places.
Yes.
They're just picking on Texas because part of the reason why is because they have their eye on Texas and trying to find a way to make that a bluer state. And it's not happening right now. Okay, it's not going to happen during this redistricting process.
And Beto O'Rourke will never be governor of Texas.
They're still look. Beto wants to be governor of Texas. This is I want him to go down in flames so he can just go away.
Yes.
I mean, it's just. I'm so sick. I think a lot of Democrats are sick and tired of Beto.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Texas Democrats like Lloyd Benson and Ann Richards. I don't think either of them would have been comfortable supporting Beto O'Rourke for dog catcher. Frankly, Ann Richards was very pro-gun to she was a Democrat, but she was pro-gun. She understood Texas. She even had I think it's a musical, Little Dumpling of the Ann Richards story. She's got a musical. I mean, they're making musicals about everything these days, But here's the other thing: Bob Dole never forgot his agricultural roots. One thing I remember back when I went to Senator Dole's office, and here's a picture of myself. That is myself with Senator Dole, my late friend Mitchell, and Councilman David Marks over there.
Is that who that is?
That is Councilman David Marks. Yeah.
When you posted that picture that day, I'm still like, who are these guys?
Yeah, that's Councilman Dave Marks from Baltimore County, and he was there when we went to go see Bob Dole, and we gave Bob Dole a Maryland mug, and I think we gave him a Maryland T-shirt as well. But one thing that was very poignant about, you go to his office, he had this great sign says, a Kansas farmer feeds, I believe it was like 50 families and you. I mean, he understood agriculture, and that's why he was very key in getting Jack Block, who spoke at our Oktoberfest and had been a good friend to Montgomery County Republicans. Jack Block was ag secretary for President Reagan's both terms, and one of the reasons he got there because Bob Dole is the one that shepherded through, made sure that Jack got in there because Jack was an agriculture guy. Jack understood agriculture, and he was very instrumental in helping farmers across the country. Because back then, farming was not as profitable as it is today. That was back when Willie Nelson was doing Farm Aid, and you had family farms shutting down. And I think Jack Block and Senator Dole uh, were key in turning things around in American farming. Farmers were leaving, selling the farms. Banks were taking over these farms, and now I think we're seeing a resurgence in farming, and that's directly related to Bob Dole and Jack Block.
Yeah, you mentioned farming. It's been interesting too because as I've been reading about just the general events because of our supply chain issues and all these things that come up. I mean, there's been a couple of articles in the Wall Street Journal lately. One was about dairy farms. Dairy. I didn't realize this. I mean, because I don't pay that much attention to agriculture unless it comes up as a major story. But so the Journal wrote the other day about. So California had become the #1 producing state for milk in the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're losing ground now to other states because of the drought.
Yep.
These dairy farms need a ton of water, and the California had just recently announced their allocation, and there's lots of places in California that are not going to get their normal allocation. So the farms actually now either shutting down in California completely, or some people are moving their operations to Texas and to the Dakotas and things like that, where they have a little bit more resources to deal with. So you have that. You have dairy farming, which always kind of watch out for that. I mean, almond milk, oat milk have become big things, but anything we're involving this is still a very water intensive operation. Then we have the farming kind of thing that you're talking about too.
Yep.
And stories about farmers who are just getting pinched now because of all the higher costs. So supply.
Yeah, I mean, all the vineyards in Napa Valley in California. I mean, they're having a price of wine, along with everything else in Joe Biden's America is also going to be going up because grape farmers do need a significant amount of wine as well, water as well, to produce and create the wine. The whole industry and this is probably going to shut down a lot of the family-owned vineyards in California because they can't afford to, grease the palms of some assemblymen in California, make sure they get their fair share of water. And I think it's basically, this just goes back to the failures of California on so many different levels. There's a reason why Elon Musk left and went to Texas. These vineyard owners cannot move their winery operations out of California. They would if they could, like Jane Wyman, on the series Falcon Crest, where she owned a California, the first Mrs. Reagan.
Yeah.
Just a note. It was about a life on a vineyard, California vineyards, in a soap opera style, but those are big operations in reality, and you can't move that. You can move assembly plants. You can't move farms as easily as you can move assembly plants. Even these cattle farms, moving cattle farms is a big endeavor. Moving cattle farms from California to Texas or even Nevada or the Dakotas, it is a big operation. You can't. It's not like Elon Musk picking up stakes, building a factory in Texas and shutting down his factory in California, moving the people there. It's not that simple.
Yeah, well, I mean, like on the winery operations, I mean, you need the right climate, and so you can't grow grapevines, the wine for the grapes for the wine in every place. I mean, there are certain places that are just just perfect, the climate and everything like that. But the water is becoming a big problem in California and some of those western states. So I don't know. Maybe the Virginia vineyards, get a little bit of a better boost out of that or something like that.
And Maryland actually has some really good vineyards actually out in Frederick. I mean, Maryland's actually a decent. I've grown grapes in my backyard, and these were like, the grapes you eat, opposed to wine grapes. But they grew very well. I got way too many grapes growing one year. I couldn't give them away fast enough Kind of like my problem with strawberries one year when I had so many strawberries, I couldn't give those away fast enough in my garden. Uh, in Maryland, I mean, California winery owners, if you guys would have moved to Maryland, Larry Hogan is governor. We are a pro-business state. We've got some wonderful land, out in Western Maryland that's ideal for growing grapes. And you can
Yeah.
set up your winery operations. Ernest and Julio Gallo. You can move over. You don't have to be in California anymore.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot to be said about California and their business climate, the
Hmm.
politics, all of things over there are very, just it's just not very business friendly. I mean, look, I mean, we've gone through this pandemic. One thing we've seen because of the high cost of living and all these kind of things is that when you have the tech companies like Facebook and Apple and all these guys, Google, which have controlled a lot of Silicon Valley, and they're saying, well, not everybody has to come back to the office. Some people can work remotely now and do that. A lot of people are saying, yeah, no, I'll live in Nevada or Arizona or
Hmm.
someplace like that or Idaho, and I'll work from there and do that because I don't have to worry about the traffic in San Francisco and the Bay Area and all of these things like
Hmm.
that, and just the high cost of living. I don't think it gets them out of the taxes per se because I'm sure because if they work for a California company, they're still probably California's probably still looking at them as California
And didn't
employees.
Gavin Newsom want to have an exit tax?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I still remember the stories. It's been decades though about people who worked in California, they retired in California, but then they decided to move to Florida or something like that. But California still taxes them on a good percentage of their pension, even though
Hmm.
they're living in another state, because you earn that money in our state, so therefore we are going to tax you even though you're not here anymore. That type of thing like this, and those are just typical liberal politics that just kind of turn people off to things like that. If they get a chance to leave, they will. Unfortunately, what that tends to do too, though, for the red states is that they tend to move into the red states because things are so much better in the red states, and they start altering the politics a little bit in the red states. All the people who flee the blue states that go to the red states and then turn the red states maybe into a little more purple or something like that. It's like, you know, I'm all for economic development. I just don't necessarily need the liberals, clogging the red states and changing the politics radically there
Very
either,
true.
and all.
Very true.
But I don't know. Redistricting. I mean, this is a big battle, right? I mean, we have it here in Maryland. Hogan had this commission. They drew a fairly decent map, a better map than we knew the legislature would draw, and the legislature has passed their own map, which, since they have the votes, they can do that. They know they can override any veto that Hogan has. Uh, but that map, I mean, is that map that they've drawn for this next 10 years, is it really any better than the one we've had for the last 10 years?
Yep. And I think it's kind of funny. They got a dinosaur. They got a T-Rex map district now that looks like the dinosaur from Toy Story. JB Jennings had a great article. By the way, we're going to be joined shortly by Delegate Novotny, who's going to talk to us about redistricting session as well as
Good.
other issues of the day. He'll be joining us in about 5-10 minutes, and he'll join the conversation on our other topics we're talking about this evening.
All right. Well, so let's save the redistricting talk until Reed gets on
Yeah,
here,
absolutely.
like that.
Yeah.
In the meantime,
Yeah.
let's talk about Omicron,
Yeah.
and Biden. So, what was it? It was the Friday after Thanksgiving. The
Mhm.
big blow up about this Omicron, virus, variant. Stock markets tanked for several days. People got panicky.
Mhm.
South Africa.
And now we find out it's not that bad.
Later, yeah, not that bad. I mean,
And on a related note, Montgomery County just moved the goalpost. Last night, Mark Elmer, 2 nights ago, Mark Elmer goes, we're at 82% vaccination. We'll be at 85 in about a week or two. And he goes, well, we may not lift the indoor mask mandate even then.
oh, did he say that? I missed
Yes.
it. Oh,
Yeah. This
you know,
guy.
you kind of knew this would happen, right? Is
Yeah.
that they set this thing, which was they were still away because they could still keep that mandate in effect.
Mhm.
And yeah, move, like you said, move the goalpost. Now that they're getting close, move the number up because that'll be better, right?
Yeah.
Paul, we could. I'm still
Well, he
saying,
goes to Mako and
got
doesn't
that
wear a
thumb
mask.
on us.
He goes to Mako and doesn't even wear a mask.
Right.
Which is the basically Maryland Association of Counties conference. And he's not even wearing a mask while he wants all of us to wear. It's very typical of the left. I mean, Nancy Pelosi does it, Joe Biden does. They all do it. It's like these are the rules for you guys, but not for us.
Yeah, look, I mean, these
A
politicians.
lot like Leona Helmsley,
Yeah. I love how you bring up these names from the past,
Yeah.
and people are like, only people our age or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, hey,
people.
Garrett, you're watching. Google Leona Helms, but then again, Garrett probably knows who Leona Helmsley is. Taxes are for the poor.
Yeah, so like I said, here we are 2 weeks after this. I mean, there are some things that are going on where cases are spiking overall and things like this, but those things are bound to happen in certain ways. I mean, as the weather gets colder, people are still gathering together indoors. I mean, we kind of expect a little bit of this, but as you just said, I mean, if we're at 82% in Montgomery County, we have there's a high. I guess I heard I guess Fauci they're going to redefine what fully vaccinated is. So they're going to move the goalposts as well, right?
Yes, it's going to be 3 shots and then it'll be 4 shots. This is all about control. It's all about controlling the masses, frankly. It's reminiscent to, it's kind of like this, kind of like what the Soviet Union would do. It's, I think they got their hands on Joe Stalin's playbook or Nikita Khrushchev's playbook. And we are joined by our special guest. Welcome, Dr. Novotny. How are you doing?
Driving somewhere.
Hey, I'm doing well. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Are you in the
can.
car?
Yeah. So I apologize for the background right now. I'm actually waiting for my daughter to come out from cheer practice, so sitting in the car. But thanks for the invite.
Yeah, glad to. You guys had a busy week. You guys wrapped up a day early, though, from what I understand.
We did. Is this angle a little better?
Yeah.
Yes, much better.
Yeah,
Yes.
better. Yeah.
All right. We did wrap up one day early. It was. It felt like 2 months, but it was only 4 days. And as you can imagine, being in the minority party, it was a lot of veto overrides. So, in my opinion, the Republicans would get up and make some great arguments that made sense to the majority of people who are either listening or in Maryland, and then we would get voted down. And when that happens so many times in a row, it just seems pretty disappointing.
Yeah, and it's one of the fun stuff is it's funny you mentioned it felt like 2 months. It's almost like Jimmy Buffett says about San Juan Airport, a day feels like a month. Yeah, it's like that.
Exactly right.
Maryland State House and San Juan Airport.
Probably a lot of similarities, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Let's talk about redistricting because that's obviously the hot issue.
Yeah,
and everything like that. I was talking. Dwight and I were talking a little bit beforehand. I was saying that the governor had a commission issued a map, which was definitely better than the map we've got. We currently have right now, and obviously the Democrats drew their own map, which is the one that they've approved, and everything like that. I mean, let me ask you this. I mean, do you think? I mean, how do you compare the Democrats' map as they've drawn it to the one that we're in now?
This is the Democrats' map, by the way, on the screen right now.
Yeah, I've seen that depiction.
Thank you, Senator J.B. Jennings. But I tell you, I must say the similarities are startling.
No, it's completely true. So I guess to the baseline, are we moving in the right direction? Is that how you're
right?
asking?
Yeah.
So so this is the thing. Sure, but we're moving from an F to an F, in my opinion. So and it's not necessarily just my opinion. There was a Princeton review that actually gave that map an F for partisanship, which basically means, yes, there are districts that are more competitive, but their districts before used to be 90-10, like 90% Democrat, 10% Republican. We do that all day long. So now they've gone from 60-40, but all they need is one vote. So in all reality, we could go from in 1992 having 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats to 2022 having 8 Democrats and 0 Republicans representing us in the House, while the entire time having a similar amount of people vote for a Republican from Maryland. And the only thing that changes is the maps. So we go from 4-4 to 8-0, hopefully 7-1, 5-2, but could be 8-0 this next year coming up if things go poorly.
Yeah.
So I'm very disappointed.
And I think, I think the courts should basically go our way, frankly. Is Merrick Garland going to sue the Maryland Democrats, for their redistricting map like he is in Texas? Hey, Merritt, are you going to do that for Maryland? Are you going to sue the Democrats in Maryland on the map?
I'm pretty sure that's not how it works. Pretty sure. But so 2 things. The biggest actual disappointment I had is the fact that there are very many Howard County Democrats, bringing it back to where I'm at, and Howard County Democrats that came out in 2018 when they were running for office and said, this is one of my number 1 priorities is get these maps right in a nonpartisan, non-biased map that represents all of Maryland, no matter how it comes at the end, who gets elected, I'm for that. Everyone said some version of that, and then everyone voted party line for the Democrats map. And that's the most disappointing part is when we have people elected who are politicians and not public
and this
servants.
is the map we've got. And if you can see the map, I don't know if you can see the map. I got the map on the screen right now.
I see it.
And it shows District 6 coming all the way down to Montgomery County, down to source, District 8, I should say. I really think District 8 should just be Montgomery County. And then you give then you can bring in a little bit of 4 or 3, into Montgomery County if you want. And you leave cut off 6 at Frederick County, and none of Montgomery County is in 6 at that point. I think would be ideal. Because I think these people over here from Garrett to Frederick County, Carroll County, they have more in common with each other than they do with us in Montgomery County.
I think that is exactly the words that the Democrats use to actually pass this map.
Yeah.
We have something in common, but you look how it cuts through Montgomery County. The reason it cuts through is that you all have a great population down in D.C.
Yep.
I mean, it's huge. And the vast majority of them vote Democrat. So why not use that population as you see those strips coming down to knock out any chance of a Republican? And that's what they've done. And again, it's frustrating coming from years and years and years of being in the military, just always having service above self droned into me and saying, hey, you got to look out for the team and do what's right, to joining this esteemed body in the Maryland legislature and then having people just do what's right for their side.
Don probably remembers, like when Don and I were growing up, Montgomery County was District 8. That was Montgomery County. And I think if right now, we're actually could make 2 districts out of Montgomery County. So why don't we do this? Put 8 and 4 in Montgomery County. Leave 6 Frederick County, and you can even give them Carroll County if you want. I don't care. We give Prince George's County can be its own county, be its own congressional district as well. There you go. I've created 3 Democrat seats. Baltimore City could be its own district. So we could have a 4-4 legislature if they did it honestly. If they really drew the lines honestly, we could have a 4-4 4-4.
I think in all honesty, and you're getting at what the map is, but Maryland is actually not that liberal. We're not a 7-1, 8-0 type of map.
We're not Massachusetts. We are not Massachusetts.
We are, I think, in my opinion, 6-2 is pretty appropriate. Between 6-2 and 5-3. We do have more Democrats than Republicans, but it's not 8-0 and 7-1.
Yeah,
that's just a result of gerrymandering. Now, so the transition I'd like to make at some point, you tell me when you're ready to talk about it,
Sure.
is they do the same thing at the state level. So the state maps for state Senate and state House are going to be gerrymandered just the same,
Hmm.
but people don't get worked up the same amount on these maps.
And I must say, the state maps I've seen, they're just from bad to horribly bad to absolutely outrageous. What are you thinking? Is what they come down to. I mean, the fact that they're going to put you in Montgomery County, I'd love to have you represent Montgomery County, but honestly, do people in Carroll and Howard County have anything in common with Montgomery County? Probably not.
So, well, probably not Silver Spring, but
Mhm.
maybe Damascus or Olney. I tell
Perhaps.
you what, Damascus. I live probably 5 miles from the border of both Montgomery and Carroll.
Mhm.
So right in the middle of that area. And I tell you what, when I go through 97, heading down to DC, there's a lot of farm country out there that looks very similar to the farm country I pass or I live in Howard County that
Very
I
true.
pass in Carroll.
Yes,
So I'm
very
not
true.
I'm not as upset about that. The problem is what they're going to try to do is shore up the Democrats that are currently in the House and the Senate,
Mhm.
and they're going to do that by making bubbles one way or another to make sure, just like at the state level, making sure that they get the right people in. And you've probably said this and heard it multiple times, but it's frustrating when politicians choose their voters versus allowing the voters to choose their
Mhm.
politicians. And again, the state level is not as pronounced
Mhm.
because the districts look okay. They don't look like random dinosaurs.
Mhm.
But just know, and I'll send this so you have it.
Mhm.
Just know what they generically do is keep all of the districts that have Democrats very small. They keep them about 5% smaller in
Mhm.
population. So they basically pack a lot of Democrats into the state house so they can get more votes. So their trick there is not to draw the lines weird, it's to make them smaller or bigger. You can't do that at the federal level because there's actually in the Constitution it has to be the exact same amount. So you have to have the exact same amount. Now at the state level, you don't have the exact same amount. So they're allowed to make some bigger and some smaller. And you'll see all the Republican ones, we represent more people
Mhm.
because they want to dilute our vote down in Annapolis.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, there is no reason why Andy Harris should have any part of Anne Arundel County, frankly. I could see Harford County, being more of in his district, but Anne Arundel, I mean, no, not really, not at all. You know, uh, I think that this is just, I mean, this is something that Ben Jealous wanted to do, and the woke Democrats in Maryland want to wipe out every last Republican. I mean, honestly, if the Democrats had their way, they'd probably go around throwing Republicans into concentration camps in Maryland. That's how bad the Democrats are. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Don.
Yeah, you're on two screens now.
yeah.
I dropped, so can you kick me
Okay.
out?
Yep, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, no, I was going to say on the federal level, I would like to see just as an experiment if somebody would run, and maybe somebody has, but I've just never seen it. If they would just run all the congressional districts in the United States, just start from one end of the state, do a couple of experiments, run them in different directions, start at the north end or whatever, go to the south, and just make them contiguous and break them up based on the population, how many every district's got to have, and see what you would wind up with. Keep them all as close as you can. There had to be some variation for that, but then you wouldn't, in an effort to try to avoid all these crazy schemes, and just blindly see what that would be. I have no idea if that would favor Republicans or Democrats. Obviously, I'd love to see something favor Republicans, but when you win an election right now, based on how our country is run, you get the opportunity to do this, right? You get to kind of skew these maps the way you want to do it. I think what you said about the state level is fascinating to me because I did not realize that there is nothing in the state that says everything has to be equally divided. That the the party control, can basically jigger this thing to really, really favor them. Going this way. And you are absolutely right, Reed. In terms of people getting, worked up about the state level stuff. Nobody even understands it for the most part. If we're on, those of us who've been on central committees and then involved in politics, yeah, we have an interest. We kind of understand this. But I don't think that the average voter, if you went to the average person in Montgomery County and you said, how many, do you know who your senator is, or how many, do you know how many delegates and Senate are in Montgomery County? They won't know.
Nope.
They don't even, most of the time, they don't even know who the candidates are until they show up on election day. And then they still don't know. They say, well, if it's a Democrat, I'm voting for him because I'm a Democrat. If it's a Republican, I'm going to. But they have no real idea for state delegates, and state senate, who these people are for the most part. The politically active involved are, but the average person doesn't understand this. And I think that's really too bad on terms of that we have these unequally sized districts. That is really not a fair representation of how this should go.
It doesn't at all. I've actually coined this term that I like, is that I'm micro famous. And I say that because if I walk around Annapolis and I have, my button on that says I'm a delegate, people will stop and talk to me. But if I go to Giant, I mean, shoot, I'm sitting in my district right now, and I was at an establishment, just having a drink and something to eat, waiting for my daughter to come out of cheer. Nobody said a word to me. I mean, if I had introduced myself, I'm sure they would have said something. But yep, I'm micro famous. So in the sphere of people who pay attention, they might have heard of me. But you know what? It is both unfortunate, but you have to take it as a realization that people are more concerned, which is not a bad thing, more concerned about things like what I'm doing. I'm waiting for my daughter at an event that she's going to cheer, and she loves it, right? So it's we're the typical like soccer mom, soccer dad, taking care of our family, and I want people to do that. I mean, politics shouldn't be everyone's number one thing, but once every 2 years or 4 years, you should take a look and see who represents you best, and that's just my opinion. So
yeah, and here's the thing. I think you're right. Like Maryland is not crazy left as the ones folks in Annapolis are. I mean, we've had some Democrat governors, Harry Hughes, William Donald Schaefer, Marvin Mandel. They were not horrible. They weren't these leftist wackos. Paris Glendenning is when Maryland took that hard, left turn. Paris Glendenning, and they've only gone. I mean, Mike Miller Mike Miller was not as crazy as the current speaker. Bush was not as crazy as the current speaker.
Yeah, Adrian Jones.
Yeah, Casper Taylor, who was a thorn in the side of Governor Ehrlich, was not nearly as bad as these guys are now. I mean, Anthony Muse, who was a representative from PG County, African American Democrat. I mean, these people think Glenn Ivey and his wife are too far right wing for the Democrat Party in PG County.
I love coming on and speaking to both of you just because I can get my history lesson of Maryland politics for the last 250 years. No, you're exactly right. But I think one of the keys is not necessarily, fake news or mainstream news or any of those things. I think one of the problems is what we started talking about this, which is gerrymandering. If you draw a district in which only the most liberal person will win, or the most conservative person will win, you're going to end up with extremists that are down in Annapolis and in DC.
Oh yeah.
I think that does no one good. I would rather a 50-50 fight in the sense that I would rather represent a district that has 50% Dems and Republicans and allow people to choose who they want to represent them than having a district, although it would be easy and fun, 90-10, 90% Republican and 10% Democrat. It's just the more that the people in power gerrymander these districts at the state and local level and at the national level, it creates this far right, far left division.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing. Most people in Maryland, are not crazy. They're not all about the little. They don't care. They care. This is what most Marylanders care about. They care about one, their trash is picked up. They care that their roads are paved. they care that the schools they send their kids to where their children are safe. They're not going to have a gunman come in and blow their brains out. That is what people care. If you look
Yeah.
at the Maryland State Legislature, with the exception of our friends in the Republican Party, it seems like every Democrat cares about Joe Biden's agenda more than what Maryland's agenda is. They're basically turning Annapolis into mini Washington. I know Annapolis used to be the capital of the United States for a short time. I mean, are these Democrats now, they want to become just like Washington, D.C., being like very bitter and hateful? I mean, there is no room. I mean, there are no Democrats you can compromise with anymore. There isn't any, you can make a deal with, say, Anthony Muse or a Casper Taylor or with a Mike Miller or Mike Bush. You can make deals with them. But I mean, these people, on the other hand, now today, Larry Hogan can't make deals with any of these Democrats because they go, "Oh, you're a Republican, you got horns and a tail, and you're the devil incarnated," and that is simply not true.
What I always say is if I have nothing good to say, I say that people are nice, right? In the sense that a lot of Democrats are just, they're nice, they're pleasant, they say hello in the hallways, that's fine. I don't want to speak ill of the person themselves. My issue is more on how they vote than who the person they are. So a lot of them are nice, and that's great, and we're all, I don't want to even say buddy, but I pass them in the hall and I say hello.
Yeah, I mean, I know. Yeah. It's like I know Senator Zucker. He's not a crazy. He's from New Jersey. That kind of makes him a little crazy. But I mean, he's not. But he is another one. I mean, he's not nutty. Eric Lukey, on the other hand, is a nutcase who is also from Montgomery County. I mean, if I know, if I had to deal with, if I had my choice, if I had to deal with a Democrat, I'd rather deal with Craig Zucker than Lukey, because Lukey's just nuts. The guy, wants to have voting by mail forever and stuff like that. I mean, he's insane.
I know. Well, Dwight, Don, not to cut this conversation short, but my daughter is walking out of cheer as we speak, and I'm going to be the terrible dad if I don't go walk over and actually pick her up and do all those things. But please, thank you for the short invite, and I'm glad I was able to spend a couple minutes. But looking forward to talking and seeing you all in person here real soon.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Reed. Really appreciate the insight.
Thanks for joining us, Reed.
Yeah, we'll talk to you all soon.
Okay, we'll see you later.
Take care.
All right, that was good. That was good, Dwight. I'm glad that you had Reed on there because, I mean, I learned something. I had no idea about the state house, how the Democrats have really got their thumb on this thing and are really screwing the voters and the Republicans over on that basis. But and he's right. I mean, right? You guys are both right. Maryland is not this overwhelmingly liberal state. We should not have a 7-1-8-0 congressional representation on the national level. 6-2, 5-3. That I think is somewhere where you can say that makes some sense, but not the way the Democrats are setting this up. And Merrick Garland, if he was actually a fair and reason, if he's going to sue Texas, he needs to sue Maryland for the same reasoning. They're using Texas as this. There's not enough. You didn't do enough for Latino and Black representation and whatnot. Well, you're not. Maryland is not doing anything for fair representation either. So be even-handed about this, Merrick Garland. But no, you're a political hack, Merrick Garland.
Yes, he is. He's a hypocrite.
That's it. That's right. Well, and I think what we've seen, in this 11-month period, roughly, for that the Democrats have been in office of Joe Biden, is that we're seeing more hypocritical talk and behavior than ever before. I mean, they came in, they thought they were going to ramrod their agenda down the throats of the Americans. They've had a rude awakening, but they are extreme hypocrites on just about everything out there.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Have they not, are the Maryland Democrats not paying attention to what happened in Virginia? I mean, Terry McAuliffe was not supposed to lose to Glenn Youngkin. I mean, it was basically a coronation for Terry McAuliffe. Terry McAuliffe, he made a gaffe and told the truth. He doesn't want parents involved in schools, and that's a lot of Maryland Democrats are like that. I mean, you ask, Montgomery County Democrats. I mean, they're the close. They're like all about that. Oh, they don't think parents should have any say, frankly, in how what kids are taught in the school. There's a reason why our Board of Education, as you know, I'm running for county council at large in Montgomery County. And I'm of the mindset, look, if Board of Education, you don't want to share the values of the residents of Montgomery County and push the far left ADA, NEA agenda, then, maybe we should defund you. Maybe you guys shouldn't get a salary as members of the Board of Education. Maybe we should start cutting funding to teachers and taking that money, giving it to tax cuts for parents to send their kids to parochial schools, private schools. Maybe we should start doing that, because obviously you're not doing enough to. You're basically against voucher, school choice, charter schools. You're basically forcing a child to be to a death sentence to stay in a poor school because of where they live. There's no reason why we can't, this county like Montgomery County, we can't have two or at least one charter school where parents would have an alternative to send their kids to. There's no reason why we shouldn't have a voucher program. I mean, what are they afraid of these charter schools? Honestly, if we treat these schools like we treat businesses, where we give, what happens is successful schools will thrive, failing schools will be shut down. And like they did that in DC. They took over a lot of failing schools in DC, and last check, folks in DC are just as liberal as Montgomery County Democrats.
Right. And what happens, across the country in a lot of these places, particularly more where you have these urban areas, when they put together these charter schools or these other types of things that are similar, parents flock to them, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's it. I mean, there's waiting lists. People are, the parents are desperate to find a better education for their kids. They want the best education possible, and they look at these things as alternatives, better than the public education system, and they flock to that. I mean, that is a rebuke of the teachers' unions and the NEA and all these people, and how much they do things and the way they do things. To your point about Virginia, and the whole thing that happened over there, is that the Democrats in Maryland. Okay, so now we've got an open seat basically for the governor, right? It's going to be an open race in 2022. The numbers, the registration numbers would say yes, the Democrats should win, as they had won most of the races during our lifetime. However, if they try to run a campaign like Terry McAuliffe, if they try to take that playbook of Californian Gavin Newsom, which was fine in California, but for very specific reasons, and they want to replicate it in Maryland, they will fail. Those arguments will not work. I think a lot of parents, just like you were talking about, I mean, go back to the bread and butter issues. Larry Hogan, I will always remember. I mean, he hit him hard. He stayed away from those lightning rod issues. He didn't address really the Second Amendment. He tried to shy away from abortion.
Yep.
And he focused in on taxes and economics, and you can still do that. And Kelly, if she becomes the nominee, she can talk about under Hogan how things have gone generally pretty well.
Well, look at it. Kelly is to George H.W. Bush was to Ronald Reagan. All she has to do is campaign. Did you like the last 8 years? Do you like the fact that we've got a surplus instead of a budget shortfall? Do you like in the direction the state's going in? If you answer yes, you're going to vote for Kelly Schultz for governor. If you say you don't like it, you will go back to the days of Martin O'Malley with 100 and some new taxes, bring back the rain tax for the state and so on, then you vote for a Democrat. Most likely, most people have enjoyed the 8 years of Larry Hogan, Democrats and Republican alike.
Yeah, see, that's the thing too, is that I don't know who the Democrat nominee will be, at this point in time, but whoever it is, the problem I see for them is that exactly what is their agenda? I mean, what is their platform that they're going to run on? Because I think, despite the fact that a lot of conservatives in Maryland were not happy with Hogan, he, he did what he had to do based on what he could, what he could do with an overwhelmingly Democrat state legislature. So I give him credit for that, and I think that Maryland, were much better off under Hogan than they would have been under any other Democrat. And I think Kelly, if she is indeed the nominee, she needs to exploit that. I mean, yeah, kind of build on the basis of how things happen, but look at that platform, the agenda, whatever the talking points are for the Democrats, and excoriate them, blow them up, and just show the differences as to why you need this. Is that and Kelly is she's probably the right fit, and that's because she's also kind of Hoganish in a lot of ways. So I think she's palatable to Democrats. She's not a hard right winger kind of a thing like that.
She has a very high ACU rating too.
Yeah, I thought what Governor Ehrlich was saying about kind of the changing nature of Maryland, right? I mean, Anne Arundel, where he represented Anne Arundel for many, many years in the House. That's a very different seat now, right? It's the demographics have changed through redistricting and a lot of other things. So Bob Ehrlich, being much more conservative, would have an even tougher time. It probably, I think it would be virtually impossible for the Bob Ehrlich conservative type of guy to win statewide in Maryland as a governor. But Kelly Schultz, she could do it because she's more like Hogan. And conservatives in Maryland have got to remember, as much as hardcore we are on issues and things like this, we have got to be pragmatic about it's better to have the Republican in there, even if they're not the Ronald Reagan conservative, than to have a Democrat in there. Okay. So let's be reasonable here, Republicans in Maryland. Some of you conservatives have just got to get on the train here a little bit.
And here's a little food for thought: is Kelly Schultz has a higher ACU rating than Dan Cox does. When Kelly was, and Dan Cox represents the same area Kelly represented when she was in the state house. Kelly has, I think she's got about, I want to say 3 to 5 points higher rating than Dan Cox did in that seat. And at the end of the day, it's about winning elections. I would love to have a Barry Goldwater Republican as our governor in Maryland, but we're not going to have that. To paraphrase the great late Secretary of Defense Donald Trump, we vote for the candidate we have, not the one we'd like to have. And it goes back to the Buckley rule: vote for the most conservative candidate that is able to get elected. And
did you just say Trump, or did you mean Rumsfeld?
No, Rumsfeld. Did I say Trump?
I think you said Trump.
I meant Rumsfeld. I may have said Don Rumsfeld. And way back Buckley. You basically vote for the most electable conservative that you have, and that is Kelly Schultz. And speaking of candidates, I understand Mr. Lincoln Project is about to make an announcement. He's running for governor of the great state of Maryland, and that is Michael Steele, and he's running as a Republican. You'd think he'd run as a Democrat or something like that, but he's running.
Yeah. I don't know. Look, I mean, you just mentioned Dan Cox, and it's like my problem here is that he's running as a Trump guy, right? And he's going to get the Trumplicans, in Maryland. We're seeing the support he's getting from them, but it's not going to fly in Maryland. Okay, Trump is extremely unpopular overall, in Maryland. This is there's a base in there that like Trump, but it's a small one overall compared to the population. You're better off casting your vote with someone who has a shot to win. So it's infuriating to me to watch.
Yeah, I mean, look, we were all part of the Trump team in Montgomery County, 4 years, just this past year in 2020, as well as 4 years prior to that. We all, put a lot of our own personal treasure and wealth in London helping President Trump get elected in 2016. We went over a lot of us went to Pennsylvania to campaign for President Trump as well. we like President, but we understand that President Trump cannot win in Maryland if he ran for governor here.
No, look, I mean, I think, if Dan Cox, doesn't align himself with Trump, but lists, like his platform is on policies that are related to Trump. I mean, my thing with Trump is that Trump as a person, has, just a high unfavorability rating, but the Trump policies overall were pretty good, right? And if you can kind of separate the two, you stand a better chance, because if Cox just went out there and had whatever the listed 5 Trump type policies that he thinks would work in Maryland, people probably would say that's fine. But if he tries to align himself with Donald Trump too closely, he just loses a lot of people, and he comes off as a crazy person, as a result.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I mean, I was listening to the 538 podcast today, and they were talking about a lot of things, and when they talk about the Georgia governor thing, we have David Perdue now being pushed by Trump to run against Brian Kemp. How, what were they discussing? And these are liberal journalists, so that's why I like to listen to them, because I want to find out what's inside their mind a little bit.
Yeah.
This is they asked the question. It says, are journalists going to have to cover this race as Brian Kemp being the pro-democracy, kind of guy, and then David Perdue being the anti-democracy kind of guy? And I'm like, okay, this is how crazy it is. We're talking about the state of Georgia, and they're talking about, David Perdue, who he was okay, but look, you couldn't win your general election, then you lost your special election, you follow, so you run up. So look, go away, don't do this. That you're going. We have the Georgia governor in the R column. You want to give it to the Democrats and Stacey Abrams, who never conceded that last race, right?
Yep. Exactly.
If you want to give Stacey Abrams the governorship, go ahead and run David Perdue.
Yeah. Why do we want to give? My point is, why do we want to spend money on a race we don't have to spend money on? The Georgia race,
Right. There's going to be a lot of money expended on there where money could be used elsewhere.
Just like in Texas, we have Allen West, Congressman Allen West.
Exactly.
Of Florida. He's running for. Why do we need to spend resources in the Texas governor's race? Greg Abbott's been a fine governor, frankly. Is he George W. Bush? No, but he's a fine governor. He's done a great job as a governor of Texas. There's no reason for Allen West to challenge him in a primary, frankly. I mean, Allen West should be running for Congress, or, I mean, if he wants to move around, I mean, there's, I think he's from Georgia. He would be a great candidate for that Senate seat in Georgia that's up, frankly.
Yeah, that Georgia Senate thing with Herschel Walker.
Nothing against Herschel Walker, Mr. New Jersey General, but how many people got that reference? But I think Herschel Walker, I think Allen West, who's from Georgia, he's from, I believe he's from like southern Georgia, somewhere in that area is where he's from. He could run for Senate and probably win. And you know something? That's what, but wanting to be governor of Texas, challenging a good Republican, why are you doing this, Allen West? It makes no sense other than personal egos. And
he could work his way through the system again. I mean, he could go back and try to run for a congressional seat. I'm sure he could choose something there and run against a Democrat and take a Democrat out or something like that. He could serve elsewhere and then kind of rebuild his political bona fides, and then move up the ladder. I mean, Abbott won't be governor forever, and then they can set their sights there. But why are you challenging, Abbott? I mean, because they see an avenue after that big power failure, after the big storm. Abbott took some hits and things like that, but he's still the best alternative. You don't feel like that one Beto, and once again, you challenge Abbott, you are now draining resources that could be used elsewhere. And you're dividing loyalties. It's just like, and then the Republicans are going to, this is not serving the purpose. this also shows, the lack of unity within the Republican Party every time this happens. I don't care if it happens on the Democrat side, right?
Mhm.
But every time it happens on the Republican side, I just kind of
See, the Democrat, when this happens on the Democrat, you saw in the 2020 primaries for the Democrat, they all rallied around Joe Biden really fast. Okay. Republicans, after 4 years of President Trump, not all of them rallied around President Trump, in 2020. You still had the Lincoln Project folks like Michael Steele, who's basically going around trashing the president. And now he has the audacity to run for governor as a Republican in this great state of ours. Michael Steele, I actually do, kind of say it's great to see that you're running, because we can take the gloves off and we can shine a light on your record as RNC, as a failed RNC chair and a so-so mediocre lieutenant governor whose office was plagued with a lot of problems in his office of lieutenant governor as well. I mean, you want to run? Bring it on, Michael Steele. Bring it on. And here's the thing. Here's a little message to the Dan Cox folks in Maryland. It's like, do you guys really want to set the scenario where Michael Steele could be our nominee? You and Kelly could fight it out. And then, I mean, when you have 5 people, I think there's right now 5 Republicans running for governor. You've got Robin Ficker, you've got Kelly Schultz, Dan Cox, Michael Steele, Tynes, and there's someone else. There's 6. Do you really want to draw enough votes away to give Michael Steele the win? I mean, that'd be a disaster for us, having Michael Steele at the top of the ticket. We'd kind of have to abandon our efforts and go rally around Jim Shalek for Attorney General,
That's right. Hey, Dwight, we're over.
Oh, wow, we're 6 minutes over. Final
We're
thoughts
having so
time.
much fun.
Yeah, I know. Final thoughts time. Go for it, Don.
Yeah, a couple things, I guess. One is the retirement of Devin Nunes from Congress to run Trump's True Social organization. I guess it's going to be a bigger paycheck. I mean, Nunes, and Trump, I mean, they fit like hand in glove and type of thing like that. I find this to be a rather odd type of a thing, but I don't have a lot of confidence in this whole Trump social media thing. Trump's ego is bigger than anything else. I can't even imagine working for Donald Trump with his ego and everything like that. It just Devin Nunes may find that it may not be something he wants to do, but maybe he's going to collect a big enough paycheck that it'll more than offset that. So good luck to Devin Nunes. I didn't look at his seat. I'm going to assume that his seat would still be a Republican seat anyway, going forward. But I'll wait and see that. I haven't gone deep into reading about that. Also another thing on Elon Musk. I loved how Elon Musk basically panned, Biden's Build Back Better and all the spending on EVs and charging stations, all our taxpayer money. Mm-hmm. Okay, to me, I mean, Elon Musk, okay, huge success, but his success for Solar City, which he wrapped into Tesla, and then Tesla, the EVs, all his wealth really is a result of the federal government saying you're going to get all these tax credits for having solar panels and buying EVs. Okay, mm-hmm. So this is, to me, it's like Elon Musk is basically being extremely self-serving on this because
of course he is.
Because it's like, wait a minute, I don't want any more competition. You're just opening up more competition because you want to give all these you're creating more tax subsidies, tax credits for EVs. Plus, they get the Biden plan also has this, where the unions, are trying to assert their power, saying if you buy from the union car makers, your tax credit will be twice as big as you buy from the non-union car makers. And Elon Musk is a non-union shop, so he gets hurt. He gets hurt by this on top of that. But I don't know. I mean, Elon Musk is quite a character. I find him to be very hypocritical on this issue, but
absolutely.
It's so Elon. It's just so Elon.
And it's one of those things. It's like it's just amazing, And there is an EV bubble happening. I mean, Hyundai has a new EV that TFL Trucks, which is a channel on YouTube, that they've been saying, Elon Musk should take notice about this. Hyundai or Kia. I think it's a Hyundai EV. They're the same company now, Hyundai and Kia. But they were saying how it's so much better than a Tesla. It's you get more bang for your buck, and it's not as nearly as expensive as a Tesla. It's still not affordable for Uber drivers to afford, but it's still it's more reasonably priced than say. But Monday, I guess I'll start my final thoughts unless you have any more on there.
Well, now let me just say one more thing then
Mhm.
on this EV thing,
Sure.
because I was listening to a liberal venture capitalist on a podcast, and he's become very big on the climate change issue and funding,
Mhm.
things like this, and he's very big on EVs. But I thought this was very telling, which people don't think about very much, which is that he says, I think everyone in America should should have an EV if they can afford it. And it's like, hello, this is part of this whole thing that Biden and Democrats they don't really talk about, is that how many people can afford to buy an EV?
Mhm.
It's still, even with a tax credit, it's still out of reach for the average American. So this is yet another deception by the liberals about all of this stuff about we're going to we're trying to we want to have all this net zero carbon emission by 2030 or 25, and all of this kind of stuff, is that they continue just to downplay the fact about how much is this all really going to cost everybody. So anyway, back to you.
Yeah, as this past Monday, I took my Yukon in for a oil change and tire rotation. One striking thing. I was over at the Coons dealership over in Clarksville. There's a Toyota dealership and a Honda dealership right next door. It was a 6-hour oil change just because they were backed up, and because of our buddy Joe, they're short staffed, so it takes a while for an oil change. So I was there for about 6 hours.
You actually hung around why are you in Clarksville?
Basically, I basically reached out to Jason and Breacher, and we had lunch.
Oh,
Which if we didn't do that, I think
did you have a
yeah,
6-hour lunch?
no, not a 6 hour, about a 2.5 hour lunch. But one of the things about there is the Toyota lot had maybe a handful of cars. The Coons lot only had a few cars. They had barely any used cars. The Honda lot, there was a Honda dealership that had very few. Only dealership that had, and this is just saying, a little bit more than all the others, was the Jeep dealership. They had more cars than the others, and the Hyundai place. Range Rover was the Range Rover place was pretty empty as well. So it's one of those things like what's happening, what's happening with the service. There is a supply chain issue. I know Joe Biden and Jen Psaki seem to think it's a myth, but no, it's real. I mean, last week we had our Toys for Tots party, and I went to go look for something on Saturday at Target, and the shelves were pretty empty. There was nothing really there that you'd want to give. The only thing they had was they had really cheap stuff that's you don't want to give that. You wouldn't want to give that. That's how bad it was. And then they had something that was super uberly expensive. All the mid-range stuff was gone. And I know Joe, was it last week? He said, "Oh, the shelves aren't empty." I'm like, "Oh, Joe, come with me to the Target in Rio, and I'll show you the empty shelves. Come with me to Best Buy, and I'll show you the empty shelves." And the supply chain stuff, and unfortunately, the Biden Reserve Board is not going to raise interest rates. And that is with only way to combat this crazy inflation is raising interest rates. I mean, Volcker had the foresight to raise interest rates back during the Carter Reagan era, of keeping, raising interest rates to combat inflation. But I mean, we're going to see, out of control inflation where, 2022, buckle your seatbelts, buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride, 2022, especially if nothing changes in the direction of the Biden administration. I mean, I remember Bill Clinton when he got his head handed to him in 1994. He had the good sense to pivot and kind of work with Republicans, but this guy's not going to do that. And that's pretty much our final thoughts, everyone. By the way, if you saw, we had a link up. It's links on our social sites. Go there, vote in the Republican Peer Awards. We've got a lot of interesting categories there. Go out there and vote. And we're going to be doing a special on the 22nd of December where we're going to reveal the winners and losers of our awards. Check that out. And we'll see everyone next week.
All right. That sounds great.
Okay. Good night, everyone.